At 11:03 in the morning on September 19th, 1944, Staff Sergeant Frank Thompson was hunkered down inside the turret of an M4 Sherman tank near Araort, France. He observed his gunner preparing for a confrontation that they likely would not survive. Thompson was 24 years old, had spent 4 months in combat, and had participated in 12 tank engagements. In none of those battles had his gunner spotted the enemy first. 47 German Panther tanks were advancing. Since June, Thompson had been responsible for loading the 75mm gun for Sergeant William Crawford. Their survival hinged on their ability to detect German tanks before they were seen. However, the Sherman's gunner sight had a very limited field of view. Crawford could only see 30 degrees. By the time the tank commander identified a threat and Crawford rotated the turret, German gunners were already acquiring targets. In a period of 3 weeks, the 4th Armored Division had lost 23 Sherman tanks. The first crewman Thompson lost in the loader position was Corporal David Kozlowski. On September 7th, Kozlowski, a worker from a Chicago steel mill, had trained with Thompson at Fort Knox. His Sherman was struck by a Panther round fired from a distance of 1,300 yards. A German gunner positioned in a tree line had spotted them, aimed, and fired. The shell penetrated the turret, the propellant charges ignited. Kozlowski, who was in the process of loading, died instantly. His remains stayed within the burning tank for 3 hours. The second loader was Corporal James Martinez. On September 16th, Martinez, who was Thompson's closest friend, had survived the Normandy invasion alongside him. They had often discussed opening a repair shop after the war. Martinez's Sherman had engaged 3 Panthers near Bison Lake, successfully destroying one. A second Panther had flanked them, firing from a range of 900 yards. The round entered through the side of the turret. Martinez was in the act of pulling a shell into the breech when the German round struck him directly, killing him instantly. 2 days after Martinez's death, his tank commander approached Thompson. He stated that if they had spotted that Panther just 3 seconds sooner, Martinez would still be alive. The officer was weeping. By the middle of September, Thompson had witnessed the deaths of 11 loaders. Every one of them had perished because their gunner could not detect threats quickly enough. The German tanks possessed superior optical equipment. While American crews were undoubtedly brave, one could not effectively fight what remained unseen. Thompson meticulously studied the patterns of these engagements. The outcome was consistently the same. German tanks detected Shermans first. They took their time to aim, fired with precision, and hit first. Some American crews managed to survive. Most did not. The issue was not the firepower. The 75mm gun was capable of destroying Panthers. The critical problem was being the first to acquire the target. Crawford was a skilled gunner, but his field of vision was restricted to 30 degrees. This was insufficient. Thompson realized he needed to provide Crawford with additional eyes to detect threats instantaneously, not after the tank commander had issued a warning. At that very moment, every second represented the difference between loading another round and meeting the same fate as Martinez. The solution materialized on September 18th. It was remarkably simple. A mirror from his personal shaving kit, a standard issue 3 by 4 inch item. The intention was to mount it inside the turret. This would allow Crawford to observe what was behind them without having to reposition the turret. He could detect flanking threats, see what the tank commander observed. This action was entirely against regulations. Modifying Army equipment without explicit authorization carried the severe penalty of a court-martial. However, Martinez was deceased. Kozlowski was deceased. 11 loaders were deceased. Thompson had no desire to become the 12th. He resolved to install the mirror that very night and test it the following day. Either Crawford would gain the crucial advantage of seeing threats sooner, or Thompson would perish in the attempt. If this narrative is resonating with you, please take a moment to click the like button. This action signals to YouTube to promote this content to a wider audience who appreciate the stories of these unsung heroes. Furthermore, subscribing will ensure you do not miss subsequent installments. These narratives hold significance, and the individuals who lived through them deserve to be remembered. Your engagement plays a vital role in making that remembrance a reality. Thompson worked in solitude that night. The maintenance area was silent after 10 p.m. Most of the crews had retired for the evening. The only sounds audible were the distant hum of generators and the chirping of insects against the harsh glare of the overhead lights. The air was thick with the scent of engine oil. September nights in Lorraine were cool, and Thompson could see his breath misting in the air. He retrieved his tool bag from beneath his bunk. Inside, nestled amongst the tools, was the mirror from his shaving kit, encased in its 3x4-inch metal frame, government issue. Alongside it were wire cutters, pliers, steel wire salvaged from discarded equipment, and a flashlight with a rapidly depleting battery. The Sherman tank was situated in the maintenance line, approximately 50 yards away. Thompson made his way toward it, his boots crunching on the gravel. No one challenged him. Nighttime maintenance was a common occurrence, and Thompson climbing into his own tank would not arouse suspicion. He opened the loader's hatch and maneuvered himself inside. The turret was an exceedingly cramped space. The beam of his flashlight danced across the metallic surfaces, ammunition racks, the breech of the gun, the gunner's seat where Crawford would be positioned the next day. Thompson's objective was to affix the mirror in a location where Crawford could view it without having to shift his head from the gun sight. The placement had to be precise. Positioned too high, it would be difficult for Crawford to see while aiming. Placed too low, it would impede his movements. Thompson held the mirror in various orientations, testing each potential position. His hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the profound realization that this action could lead to a court-martial. He settled on a spot 12 inches to the left of Crawford's seat, mounted at a 45-degree angle. The mirror would reflect the area directly behind the tank. Any approaching threats from the rear or flanks could be observed by Crawford with a mere glance, without diverting his primary focus from the main gun sight. A 3-second visual check would be sufficient to ascertain if a Panther was attempting to flank them. Thompson proceeded to cut 4 6-inch lengths of steel wire, bending each into a U shape to serve as mounting brackets. He then drilled holes into the turret wall using a hand drill. The drill bits screeched against the armor plate. Periodically, Thompson would pause, listening intently to ensure no one was approaching. No one came. The installation of the brackets consumed 40 minutes. His fingers repeatedly slipped, and the flashlight rolled away on several occasions. He dropped the pliers twice. Each noise caused his heart to pound with apprehension. If an officer discovered him modifying the tank, he would face charges of destruction of government property, unauthorized modification, and disobedience of regulations. The minimum consequence would be a reduction in rank. The maximum penalty was imprisonment. However, Martinez was dead. Kozlowski was dead. 11 loaders were dead. Tomorrow, Thompson would either be loading shells or burning within this turret. The mirror might afford them 3 precious seconds. 3 seconds to detect a panther before it fired. 3 seconds to engage first. 3 seconds to survive. He secured the mirror to the brackets using the wire, tightening it firmly. He then tested the angle. The mirror provided a flawless view of the area behind the tank. Thompson assumed Crawford's position, peered through the main gun sight, and then glanced left at the mirror. He could now see both simultaneously, the main sight for targets in front and the mirror for threats approaching from the rear. It was effective. Thompson meticulously cleaned up the work area, wiping away the metal shavings. The modification appeared crude, undeniably not factory equipment, but it was functional. The turret was already densely packed with equipment, ammunition racks, radio sets, fire extinguishers. It was conceivable that such a small mirror might go unnoticed during an inspection. He exited the tank at 01:30, returning to his bunk. Sleep eluded him. He lay in the darkness, contemplating the events of the following day. The 4th Armored Division was scheduled to move out at 07. Intelligence reports indicated the presence of German Panthers in the vicinity. The 5th Panzer Army was attempting to impede Patton's advance. Tomorrow promised a significant tank engagement. Either the mirror would prove effective, or Thompson would perish alongside his comrades. There was no middle ground in tank warfare. You either fired first, or you were consumed by flames. At 06:15, Thompson heard the engines sputter into life. The battalion was preparing for its movement. At 07:12, Thompson's Sherman rolled out of the maintenance area, its engine rumbling, its tracks clanking against the hard-packed ground. Thompson occupied the loader's position with 76 rounds of 75mm ammunition, armor-piercing, high-explosive, and white phosphorus racked around him. He had loaded these shells countless times. Today might very well be the last. Crawford was in the gunner's seat to Thompson's right. The tank commander stood in the cupola above them. The driver and assistant driver were seated forward in the hull. 5 men, contained within 30 tons of steel, were advancing towards German positions located 12 miles to the east. The battalion moved in a column formation. 18 Shermans spread across 2 miles of French farmland. Fields stretched out on either side, tree lines marked the distant horizon, and hills rose to the north. This was ideal terrain for an ambush, the very kind of landscape where panthers lay hidden, awaiting their opportunity, where German gunners picked off American tanks one by one. Thompson observed Crawford. Crawford had not made any comment about the mirror. Either he had not yet noticed it, or he was deliberately ignoring it. The mirror was positioned 12 inches to Crawford's left, angled at 45 degrees, reflecting the view to the rear of the tank. Thompson had tested its efficacy the previous night. It worked. However, the crucible of combat would be the true test. At 08:43, the radio crackled to life. The lead tank reported movement ahead. German armor, Panthers, possibly 6 of them, sighted at a range of 2,000 yards. This distance was too great for accurate firing. The battalion commander ordered the column to spread out and seek hull-down positions, waiting for the Germans to close the distance. Thompson's crew found a suitable position behind a low ridge. The tank commander relayed target information through the intercom. Crawford rotated the turret, scanning the area. The main gun sight revealed open farmland. No targets were visible yet. The Germans were employing intelligent tactics, utilizing the terrain to remain concealed until they had advantageous firing positions. Thompson loaded an armor-piercing round, slammed the breech shut, and tapped Crawford's shoulder. "Ready," he indicated. His heart was pounding, his hands slick with sweat. This was the critical moment, the juncture that would determine whether the mirror functioned as intended or if Thompson had futilely drilled holes in government property. At 09:07, Crawford fired. The gun recoiled forcefully. The breech opened. A hot brass casing was ejected. Smoke billowed within the turret. Thompson promptly grabbed another round and loaded it. The entire process took 6 seconds. Crawford was already traversing to the right, searching for the next target. Then Thompson heard Crawford's voice over the intercom. It was calm and steady. "Panther, left rear, 800 yards. Thompson's stomach plummeted. Left rear signified a flanking maneuver, meaning a German tank had managed to circumvent their position and was now approaching their side armor, the Sherman's most vulnerable point. A Panther round impacting their side would result in the instant death of everyone aboard. But Crawford had seen it. Without the tank commander's verbal alert, without having to traverse the turret to search, Crawford had instinctively glanced at the mirror, detected the Panther in its reflection, and immediately reported it. The mirror was working. Crawford swung the turret left with remarkable speed. The mechanism whirred. Thompson watched through the vision port and saw the Panther. It was advancing across open terrain, completely exposed. The German crew likely believed they remained undetected, confident they had ample time to establish their firing position. They probably assumed the Sherman had not yet spotted them. They were mistaken. Crawford fired. The round struck the Panther's left track. It did not penetrate the armor, but it effectively immobilized the German tank. The Panther attempted to rotate its turret, endeavoring to return fire. Crawford loaded another round with a speed Thompson had never before witnessed. It took a mere 7 seconds from the first shot to the second. The second round impacted the Panther's turret side and penetrated. The German tank shuddered. Smoke billowed from its hatches. The crew bailed out, fleeing on foot. The Panther was destroyed. Thompson had just witnessed Crawford eliminate a Panther that should have annihilated them. The German tank had executed a perfect flanking maneuver, closing to within 800 yards undetected. It should have fired first, penetrated their side armor, and killed Thompson, Crawford, and every other member of the crew. However, Crawford had spotted it 3 seconds earlier, thanks to the mirror. 3 seconds. That was all it took. 3 seconds to detect the threat, traverse the turret, and fire first, thereby achieving victory. The tank commander's voice boomed over the intercom, filled with excitement, inquiring how Crawford had detected that Panther so rapidly. Crawford responded that he had simply glanced left and observed movement in his peripheral vision. The tank commander, too preoccupied with directing them toward the next target, did not press the matter further. The engagement concluded after 40 minutes. Thompson's crew successfully destroyed 2 additional Panthers. Other Shermans within the battalion accounted for 3 more. German forces ultimately withdrew, leaving 7 burning Panthers behind. American losses consisted of 2 damaged Shermans, with no fatalities. Following the engagement, Thompson's crew returned to the maintenance area. Crawford emerged from the turret, located Thompson, and regarded him for a prolonged moment. He then shifted his gaze to the mirror mounted internally. Crawford extended his hand, touched it, adjusted its angle, and observed how it reflected the view behind the tank. Crawford posed a single question. "When did you install this?" Thompson informed him that he had done so the previous night working alone and that it had taken him 40 minutes. He acknowledged it was entirely against regulations and that he could face a court-martial if discovered. However, he reiterated that Martinez was dead and he had no intention of Crawford suffering the same fate. Crawford remained silent for a beat. Then he uttered words that would forever be etched in Thompson's memory. "This saved us today. That panther would have killed us if I hadn't seen it. I need you to do something for me." Thompson inquired what he needed. "Install one in every tank in the battalion." Thompson commenced with Crawford's wingman, Sergeant Robert Hayes. Hayes had lost his loader 3 weeks prior. The young man had burned to death when a panther struck them from the flank. Hayes himself had sustained burns on his hands. His replacement loader was a new recruit from Ohio, just 18 years old and visibly terrified. Thompson located Hayes that evening, explained the mirror concept, and demonstrated its functionality in Crawford's tank. Hayes examined it, tested its angle, and then asked if Thompson could install one in his Sherman. Thompson readily agreed, stating, "Yes, tonight, and don't tell anyone." They commenced their work after 11 p.m. Thompson brought his tools while Hayes stood watch. The installation took 35 minutes, a faster execution than the initial attempt. Thompson now possessed precise knowledge of the optimal position, the correct angle, and the technique to drill the holes with minimal noise. Upon completion, Hayes tested the mirror from the gunner's position and declared it perfect, noting that his gunner would be able to detect flanking threats instantly. Hayes then inquired about Thompson's fee for the work. Thompson replied with a simple yet profound sentiment. "Nothing, just don't get killed. That's payment enough." The following day, Hayes's crew engaged 4 Panthers near Mon Court. Hayes's gunner, utilizing the mirror, spotted 2 of them before they could reach firing range, called them out, and destroyed both. Hayes returned, effusive in his praise for the modification, and disseminated the information to every tank commander in the company. By evening, an additional 6 crews had requested mirrors. Thompson installed 3 more that night and 2 more the subsequent evening. Word of the modification spread through the battalion with astonishing rapidity. Loaders communicated with other loaders and gunners with other gunners. Tank commanders began soliciting feedback from their crews regarding the mirror modification. While some crews remained skeptical, the majority expressed an immediate desire for it. By September 25th, Thompson had successfully installed mirrors in 14 Shermans. He was utterly exhausted, performing maintenance duties during the day and installing mirrors at night, managing only about 4 hours of sleep. However, crews were surviving. The battalion's kill ratio had dramatically improved, with 5 Panthers destroyed for every Sherman lost, a stark reversal from the previous month. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams, the battalion commander, was a seasoned tanker, aggressive, intelligent, and possessing a deep understanding of armor combat. He observed a distinct change. His crews were detecting German tanks sooner, reacting more swiftly, and prevailing in engagements that should have resulted in defeat. Yet, he could not ascertain the reason for this transformation. On September 27th, Abrams conducted an inspection of the tank line, a routine procedure to assess maintenance, verify ammunition loads, and ensure combat readiness. As he climbed into Thompson's Sherman and surveyed the turret, his gaze fixated on the mirror, mounted to the left of the gunner's seat. Abrams inquired about its purpose. Thompson's stomach clenched. This was the moment he had dreaded, the potential prelude to a court-martial, a dishonorable discharge, and imprisonment, all the fears that had plagued him since installing the first mirror. Crawford intervened before Thompson could respond, explaining that it was a self-initiated modification designed to assist the gunner in spotting flanking threats. He emphasized that it had proven instrumental in saving their lives on 2 occasions within the past week. Abrams then asked who had authorized the modification. Crawford stated that no one had, that they had undertaken the work themselves, acknowledging its contravention of regulations, but affirming its effectiveness. Abrams contemplated the mirror for a considerable time before exiting the turret. He proceeded down the line, entered Hayes's tank, and observed another mirror in the identical position and angle. He then inspected a third tank, finding yet another mirror. Abrams began to grasp the scope of the situation. Multiple tanks had been clandestinously modified in the same manner, all without authorization. He summoned Thompson and directly asked, "Did you install these mirrors?" Thompson replied, "Yes, sir, all of them. 14 tanks in total. It took approximately 40 minutes per tank. I utilized salvaged materials. No requisitions were filed, no paperwork was generated. It was entirely illegal." Thompson stood at attention, awaiting Abrams's order for his arrest. Abrams then inquired how many tanks in the battalion still lacked mirrors. Thompson responded, 23, sir." Abrams looked at him, then uttered something Thompson had never anticipated. "You have 48 hours to install mirrors in every tank in this battalion. That is an order. I will handle the paperwork. Your sole focus is on keeping my crews alive." Thompson stood, dumbfounded. Abrams had just officially sanctioned the modification, rendering it legal and shielding Thompson from court-martial. More significantly, Abrams understood the profound impact of the mirrors, recognizing their life-saving potential, and was willing to bend regulations to save more lives. That night, Thompson worked with unprecedented urgency. He enlisted the assistance of other mechanics, instructing them on the mirror installation process, teaching them the precise position, angle, and drilling technique. By September 29th, every Sherman in the battalion was equipped with a mirror. The modification was no longer a clandestine operation. It had become standard equipment. The Battle of Ara commenced on September 19th and persisted for 2 weeks. The 4th Armored Division confronted elements of the 5th Panzer Army, with 47 German Panthers and Panzer IIs pitted against American Shermans. While the Germans possessed superior tanks, guns, and armor, they ultimately suffered defeat. American tankers destroyed over 60 German tanks, sustaining the loss of 18 Shermans. The resulting kill ratio astonished German commanders. They had been engaging Shermans for months, understood their vulnerabilities, and knew how to destroy them. However, something had irrevocably changed. American tanks were detecting German flanking maneuvers with increased speed, reacting more promptly, and firing first. German after-action reports detailed unusual American tactics, describing Shermans engaging targets they seemingly should not have been able to see and maneuvering defensively before German tanks could establish firing positions. It was as if the American gunners possessed an uncanny ability to see behind them. And indeed, they did, through simple 3-by-4-inch mirrors. By early October, news of the modification had transcended the boundaries of the 4th Armored Division. Tank crews shared information during resupply operations, and mechanics exchanged techniques. A crew chief from the 6th Armored Division observed the mirrors during a visit to the 4th Armored's maintenance area and solicited instructions from Thompson on their installation. Thompson obliged, and 2 days later, the 6th Armored Division began incorporating mirrors into their Shermans. Subsequently, the 10th Armored Division learned of the modification, followed by the 3rd Armored. The innovation disseminated from battalion to battalion and division to division, not through official directives or engineering orders, but through mechanics installing mirrors because they were effective and because crews were surviving. Lieutenant Colonel Abrams submitted a report to 3rd Army Headquarters detailing the mirror modification and appending combat statistics. Prior to the mirrors, the 4th Armored Division had been losing 2 Shermans for every German tank destroyed. After their implementation, they were destroying 3 German tanks for every Sherman lost. The disparity was indisputable. The mirrors provided American gunners with a tactical advantage that effectively counterbalanced German superiority in armor and armament. General George Patton, commander of the 3rd Army, reviewed the report. Patton, a master of armor combat, understood that tank engagements were decisively won by the force that fired first. The mirror modification afforded American crews those crucial additional seconds, and in the brutal calculus of tank warfare, seconds were paramount. Patton issued a direct order mandating the installation of the modification in every Sherman across the 3rd Army, not as a suggestion, but as a definitive command. Maintenance crews throughout the entire Army commenced installing mirrors, utilizing whatever materials were available, salvaged metal, wire, even glass, from shattered windows. The mirrors did not need to be elaborate. Their sole requirement was the ability to reflect. By October 15th, over 300 Shermans in Europe were equipped with mirrors. The modification, born from a single loader's desperate attempt to safeguard his crew, had evolved into an Army-wide tactical advantage. It had all transpired in under a month. German military intelligence grappled with understanding the shift. They meticulously examined disabled American tanks, discovered the mirrors, and initially dismissed them as personal effects, perhaps for shaving. It took weeks before their analysts grasped the mirror's true purpose, strategically placed to grant the gunner a rearward view of the battlefield. By then, the advantage was lost. The tactical innovation had permeated American armored formations. German strategies, previously effective for outmaneuvering opponents, proved futile. Panther tanks, once capable of ambushing Shermans from the flank, were now being detected and neutralized before they could engage. The tactical edge Germany had held for months was rapidly eroding. German tank crews began to shun engagements with American Shermans unless possessing overwhelming numerical superiority. The Panther remained a superior machine, boasting stronger armor and a more potent cannon. However, American crews now possessed the crucial advantage of early detection. In tank warfare, spotting the enemy first superseded possessing superior weaponry. Thompson had initially fitted that first mirror to safeguard Crawford. Now, that simple addition had protected hundreds of American tank crews. Soldiers who would have perished in flanking assaults were now surviving and heading home. The modification came at no cost. It demanded no new equipment, no factory overhaul, merely a modest mirror and approximately 40 minutes of labor. Nevertheless, the military hierarchy sought to formalize the change. In November of 1944, an engineering contingent from the Ordnance Department journeyed to the headquarters of the 4th Armored Division. Their team comprised 3 officers and 2 civilian engineers, tasked with assessing the mirror adaptation, determining its suitability for standard Sherman production, and officially adopting it as military equipment rather than a battlefield improvisation. The team spent 3 days inspecting tanks, conversing with crews, and conducting simulated combat exercises involving the mirrors. They meticulously measured angles, calculated sight lines, and confirmed that the modification did not impede turret functionality. Their consensus was unequivocal. The mirrors were effective and should have been integral to the original design. The Ordnance Department issued a recommendation that all newly manufactured Shermans rolling off production lines be equipped with mirrors in the gunner's station. Existing tanks in operational theaters were to be retrofitted during scheduled maintenance. The modification was to be officially sanctioned, becoming standard issue and ceasing to be an unauthorized field fix. However, a complication arose. The engineers proposed redesigning the installation for a more refined and professional execution, employing manufactured brackets instead of bent wire, and utilizing regulation mirrors in place of salvaged shaving mirrors. Their objective was to transform Thompson's improvised solution into proper military hardware. Thompson, however, remained indifferent to these aesthetic and procedural refinements. His concern was that the engineers sought all the credit. They were drafting reports, filing patents, and claiming the mirror system as an innovation of the Ordnance Department. Thompson's name was conspicuously absent from all documentation, as were Crawford's and Hayes's. The official record would attribute the development of an improved sighting system for Sherman tanks to Army engineers. Lieutenant Colonel Abrams attempted to rectify this, dispatching letters and submitting reports, ensuring Thompson's name was included in every document originating from the 4th Armored Division. Yet, these reports were seemingly lost or buried within the labyrinthine bureaucracy. The engineering team's narrative became the accepted truth. Army engineers had identified a deficiency in Sherman gunner visibility and subsequently devised a solution. Thompson learned of this in December. An officer presented him with the official paperwork and inquired if he wished to lodge a formal complaint. Thompson declined, He harbored no desire for credit or recognition. His sole concern was the survival of his fellow soldiers, the avoidance of loaders being incinerated due to their gunners' inability to perceive threats. If the Army preferred to believe that engineers had invented the mirrors, so be it, as long as they were installed. By January of 1945, the modification was standard across all American armored units in Europe. Over 800 Shermans were equipped with mirrors. Manufacturing facilities in the United States began incorporating them into new tank production. The system was now official, sanctioned, and no longer a makeshift battlefield adaptation. Thompson continued his role as loader for Crawford. They fought through the Battle of the Bulge, advanced into Germany, and survived engagements that would have been fatal just 6 months prior. The mirror proved instrumental on 4 more occasions. Each instance, Crawford spotted a German tank attempting to flank them. Each time, they fired first. Each time, Thompson remained alive. Other crews shared similar accounts. Loaders who should have perished in December were alive in January, then February, continuing the fight. The mirrors became so commonplace that new recruits often assumed they were original factory equipment, an inherent part of the Sherman's design. Only the seasoned crews understood the truth that a desperate loader had fitted the initial mirror in September, and that the innovation had propagated from crew to crew, mechanic to mechanic, and battalion to battalion, saving hundreds of lives before the Army officially adopted it. Thompson's ingenuity had irrevocably altered American tank warfare. However, his name never appeared on any official commendation, medal, or recognition. The engineering team claimed the accolades, and the Army accepted their version. Thompson resumed his duties loading shells. He had saved Crawford, Hayes, and countless other tank crews. For him, that was sufficient. The conflict in Europe concluded on the 8th of May, 1945. Thompson's unit was in Czechoslovakia when Germany capitulated. They had fought for 11 months, enduring dozens of skirmishes. The mirror had been their salvation 8 times. 8 times Crawford had detected German tanks attempting to flank them. 8 times they had fired the first shot. 8 times Thompson continued his vital task rather than succumbing to flames. Crawford survived the war, participating in 63 combat engagements and achieving 14 confirmed tank kills. He returned to Detroit in August of 1945, resuming factory work, marrying, and raising 3 children. For 40 years, he kept a photograph of his Sherman crew on his desk, Thompson prominently featured beside the tank, depicted as young, lean, and covered in grease. Crawford never forgot Thompson's actions. Annually, on September 19th, Crawford would call Thompson, expressing his gratitude for installing the mirror, emphasizing that he would not have survived without it. Thompson invariably offered the same response. He was merely performing his duty, ensuring his crew's safety, the fundamental role of a loader. Thompson remained in the Army until 1946, then returned to his home in Pennsylvania, a small town near Pittsburgh. He spent 32 years working in a steel mill, a familiar environment of hot metal, heavy machinery, and long shifts, the same work he had performed before the war. He married in 1948, fathered 2 daughters, and lived a tranquil existence. Thompson never spoke of the mirror. When questioned about his wartime service, he simply stated he had been a loader in tank crews, nothing more. He omitted any mention of the modification, the hundreds of lives saved, or his impact on American tank tactics. This was not born of modesty, but rather a belief that it no longer held significance. Hayes also emerged unscathed. The gunner who had lost his initial loader went on to fight until Germany's surrender, never losing another crew member. He credited the Mirror with saving his crew on 3 occasions. Post-war, Hayes transitioned into a career as a high school history teacher in Ohio. Occasionally, he would recount tales of tank combat to his students, highlighting how minor innovations could preserve lives. He never divulged Thompson's name, uncertain if Thompson desired such attention. By the 1960s, the Mirror modification had faded into obscurity. Newer tanks featured advanced optics, superior sighting systems, and overall enhanced capabilities. The Sherman was rendered obsolete. While museums showcased them and veterans reminisced, the memory of the crude mirrors mounted inside the turrets of hundreds of Shermans in Europe, and the desperate loader who had installed the first one in September of 1944 had largely vanished. The official Army history of armor development made no mention of Thompson. Engineering reports credited innovations to the Ordnance Department, and patents were attributed to civilian contractors. Thompson's contribution had been inadvertently erased from the historical record, not through deliberate intent, but through the impersonal mechanisms of bureaucracy. Field modifications were deemed historically inconsequential, whereas official engineering advancements were prioritized. Thompson retired from the steel mill in 1978. His subsequent years were spent in his garage, engaged in repairing automobiles and small engines, a familiar echo of his wartime duties. His daughters were aware of his military service as a tank crewman in the 4th Armored Division, but remained unaware of his involvement with the Mirrors. In 1992, a military historian researching Sherman tank modifications discovered references to improvised mirrors within maintenance logs of the 4th Armored Division, specifically mentioning Staff Sergeant Thompson. The historian dedicated 6 months to locating veterans from that unit, eventually finding Crawford. Crawford recounted the complete narrative, from Martinez's demise to Thompson's installation of the Mirror and its subsequent proliferation throughout the division. Through veteran registries, the historian tracked down Thompson, then 74 years old and still residing in Pennsylvania, working part-time in his garage. When asked about the mirrors, Thompson affirmed his role, inquiring why the historian was interested in an event from 50 years prior. The historian explained that maintenance logs from over 40 battalions had been uncovered, estimating that between 600 and 800 Sherman tanks had been fitted with mirrors. He further calculated that between September of 1944 and May of 1945, based on observed survival rate improvements in units utilizing the mirrors compared to those that did not, the modification had likely saved between 200 and 300 American tank crew lives. Thompson responded that he had never kept count, simply remembering Crawford, Hayes, and the others who returned. That, he stated, was sufficient. The historian published his findings in 1994, a concise article in a military history journal detailing the mirror modification, attributing credit to Thompson, and including interviews with Crawford and Hayes. The article reached an estimated 2,000 readers, primarily academics, veterans, and history enthusiasts. Following its publication, Thompson received 3 letters. One came from a former tank commander who had utilized the mirror in Germany, asserting it had saved his crew twice. Another was from a loader who had installed mirrors in the 6th Armored Division, having learned the technique from the Thompson's crew chief. The third was from a museum curator inquiring about Thompson's willingness to donate his wartime tools or materials. Thompson possessed nothing to donate. He had left everything in Europe, returning home with only his duffel bag and discharge papers. No mementos, no memorabilia, only the indelible memories of Martinez, Kozlowski, and the 11 others who perished before Thompson devised a method to keep Crawford alive. In 1996, Crawford journeyed from Detroit to Pennsylvania to visit Thompson. They had not seen each other in 40 years. Their conversation spanned 6 hours, revisiting the war, the mirror, and the crews they had lost and saved. Crawford mentioned his persistent yet unsuccessful efforts over the years to have Thompson recognized, writing to the Army and various veterans organizations, only to be met with indifference. The passage of time and the overshadowing of grander wartime narratives had rendered his appeals moot. Thompson, however, expressed contentment, stating that Crawford's presence, alive in his garage, was recognition enough. Frank Thompson passed away on March 14, 2003, at the age of 84, succumbing to heart failure. His obituary in the local newspaper noted his service in World War II as a tank crewman with the 4th Armored Division, but made no mention of the mirror modification, the hundreds of lives he saved, or his impact on American armor warfare in Europe. His funeral was a modest affair, attended by family and a few friends. 3 unknown men appeared after the service, introducing themselves as tank veterans whose crews had employed the mirror modification. They had learned of Thompson's passing through veterans' newsletters and wished to pay their respects, ensuring his family understood the significance of his contributions. It was on that day that Thompson's daughters learned the full scope of their father's actions, that he had installed mirrors in tanks, that these mirrors had saved lives, and that he had done so without authorization, risking court-martial, and had never spoken of it because he believed it inconsequential. Today, Thompson's story exists in fragmented pieces, maintenance logs housed in the National Archives, interview transcripts within military history collections, and a brief mention in a book about Sherman tank modifications. Most scholars specializing in World War II armor remain unaware of his existence. The mirror modification is relegated to a footnote, a historical curiosity, deemed insufficiently significant for inclusion in standard textbooks. However, a visit to the Patent Museum at Fort Knox reveals a Sherman tank from the 4th Armored Division. Within its turret, positioned to the left of the gunner's seat, sits a small, rectangular mirror, measuring 3 by 4 inches, encased in a metal frame and affixed with crude wire brackets. It is labeled as a field modification, common in late 1944, with no name attached. This mirror represents Thompson's true legacy, distinct from any official designation. It embodies the impact it had on Crawford, Hayes, and the 200 other individuals who survived because a desperate loader defied regulations to protect his crew. This is the essence of wartime innovation, not born of committees or engineering teams, but from soldiers who identify problems and implement solutions without awaiting authorization, risking everything when their comrades are falling and they can no longer bear to witness their deaths. Thompson's initial act of installing the mirror was to save Crawford. That mirror in turn saved hundreds, and though his name may be largely forgotten, you now know it. If this narrative has resonated with you as it has with us, please consider liking this video. Each like helps us unearth and share more forgotten stories from the archives with those who appreciate them. Subscribe to become a part of our community of history preservers. These narratives do not sustain themselves. They require individuals like you who recognize that true heroes were not always adorned with medals. Sometimes they were loaders, wielding mirrors and possessing the courage to break the rules. Leave a comment to let us know where you're watching from. Our audience spans from Texas to Berlin, encompassing tank museum volunteers and the descendants of Sherman crews. You are not merely viewers, you are active participants in keeping these memories alive. Thank you for your presence, your attention, and for ensuring that Frank Thompson's story does not fade into silence. These men deserve to be remembered, and you are instrumental in making that a reality.